Welcome to our first Theater Lovers Club Zoom webinar. We're delighted that so many of you responded. We have missed this. I'm Jennifer Graves, and I'll be acting as your host and moderator, and we're very happy you could join us this evening for a fascinating discussion with three of our very creative Santa Fe artistic directors. And after our panelist presentations, we're going to be asking you, our audience, what you've seen and what's engaged you. We're calling this discussion this evening Theater Next, because so many very new and creative ways of performing and presenting theater are being discovered during this very difficult time of Corona. Now, let's just start with some technical housekeeping. As this is a Zoom webinar, you're not going to be able to see yourselves, and you are already muted. So if you have a problem or you're experiencing technical difficulties, if you look in the margin of your screen, you'll find a control panel at the bottom. Some platforms have a control panel at the top, and you will see a Q&A and a chat button, hopefully. And we're going to use the chat button tonight to contact our technical people if there's any technical problems that you have, and hopefully they can assist you. So also the Q&A button, you can ask questions during any of the presentations, any questions that come to your mind during the talks. You just click on the Q&A and you can ask a question. So on chat, you ask all panelists for a technical difficulty, and then you can ask via Q&A any of your questions. We're going to hold the answers to your questions until after all of our speakers have finished. Well, it looks like we have most of our audience that has arrived. So we're going to begin the presentation right away. I'll be introducing our panelists in alphabetical order, and each artistic director will get a chance to answer some of the questions we've already directed to them. And these questions are of your productions during the pandemic, which have worked for you most successfully, and which have been your audience responses, both in numbers and feedback, and how are you inspiring and safely keeping your actors at 6 feet apart or more during these different formats? Zoom, it's pretty obvious, but there are other formats as well. And then last but not least, we're going to ask you, panelists, what have you done to try and stimulate some sort of financial response during this technical and, during this terrible coronavirus problem. And then after all of our panelists have spoken, we'd like to take as many of our audience questions as possible. And then after we have the Q&A period, we'd like to turn the camera to you. So we'd like to ask you some questions, our audience, and then we'll be taking some feedback, and at which time our panelists can leave. Our first speaker this evening is Nicholas Ballas. He's the artistic director of New Mexico Actors Lab. Welcome, Nico. And Nicholas, if you could please turn on your video and then unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Yeah. Welcome. New Mexico Actors Lab is a company of very talented actors who've been continuing to write and perform all during the past 6 months. And we'd love to know why you chose a play contest, as well as B, some of the challenges in presenting these. So Nico, if you want to take it away, that'd be great.
Thank you, Jennifer. First, I'd like to thank Theater Lovers Club for the invitation and the opportunity to share what we're going through right now with our public at large. And those of you out there, thank you for being there for us all. I really like to be more optimistic, and I began planning for this webinar, trying to get to be a cheerleader for our company and for all the other companies in town. And unfortunately, my state of mind is a little less than optimistic right now. All of what we have been doing, and I'll get to that in a minute, what Jennifer alluded to, has been a feeble substitute for what we do so well, which is intimate, immediate theater in small venues. That ritual gathering of professional theater artists and audiences eager for excellence, that creates a very special experience. And that magic, that only happens in that sacred circle where actors become characters in telling their compelling stories, and audiences are gifted the opportunity to witness the stories that are being told. Now, the audiences can see the sweat, they can feel the voices as they resonate in the room, they can almost hear the heartbeats of the actors, and the actors, they feel this as well. And that special contract, which is shared by audiences and by actors, is at the core of who we are as a company. That's what we live to do. Now, absent that possibility, here are some of the efforts that we have made. And first, before I go on, I need to acknowledge the very special partnership that I have with Benny, Robert Benedetti, who is our managing director and the founder of New Mexico Actors Lab. Benny is a 3-time Emmy Award winner, and Benny has been editing YouTube and Zoom videos for us. That's just stunning to me. 2021 was my inaugural year as artistic director, and I feel like some sort of cruel joke has been pranked on me right now. We had a terrific season with Shining City, the McPherson play, Lucy Kirkwood's The Children, Radiant Vermin by Philip Ridley, The Cradle Will Rock by Mark Blitzstein, and Reasons to Be Pretty by Neil LaBute. All of that is up in the air right now, except for Cradle Will Rock, which will be the anchoring show for our next season, 2021, dare I say. Right. So while I try to read the tea leaves and figure out what the season is actually going to be, Benny's been hard at fundraising and video production, and this is what we've done to date. We started with a series of video memoirs, and many of our core company and a couple of others added their thoughts and remembrances about shows or about the experience of being in shows that Actors Theater has done. And Jonathan Richards, Suzanne Lederer, Benny, Barbara Hatch, Rosemary Ziebert, and myself all have those videos which are up on our website. All of this, of course, is up on nmactorslab.com. Those video memoirs are touching, surprising, and I think refreshingly different. It's kind of what we love about them and what our audiences, our viewers, have loved about them as well. Following the video memoirs, we introduced a Zoom play contest. What we're finding is that the limitations of video, and there are so many of them, were such that we needed plays that were written very much for the Zoom format. So we requested that from playwrights, and we had dozens of submissions, and we narrowed those down to our 3 winners, and those were interestingly written by John Richards and Leslie Harold Dillon, and by Leslie Powell, who's a Boston playwright. And those 3 videos are up online as well at nmactorslab.com. Very interesting and different approaches. One of them takes place with 2 fighter pilots having a crisis in midair. Benny did an extraordinary job of editing that. The other that John Richards directed it's Going to Canossa, and it has a wonderful meeting between Pope Gregory VII and Henry IV as Henry tries to get into the Pope's good graces. And again, John did a fabulous job of editing and creating the ambiance, the emotional ambiance, as well as the physical ambiance for that. And then finally, I directed Leslie Powell's show, Take That Thing Off, which is a prison drama, which suited itself very well for Zoom, because that's what you're doing, is talking to the other person via video camera anyway. So those have done reasonably well. We've had several hundreds of views for those, all positive, thumbs up, thankfully. We welcome thumbs down to hear what we're not doing well, but fortunately, unfortunately, we haven't had any. Now, what works about that is, of course, we have the continued presence of Actors Lab in the community. That is, you know, we got to keep the name out there. We've got to keep some kind of product out there. But what doesn't work is we're not a video production company, and we don't want to become a video production company. The technical restrictions are huge. A handful of companies, some of them local, and some of the shows that I've seen my colleagues in town do are wonderfully excellent. There was a particularly strong show that the Irish Repertory Theatre did of The Weir, Conor McPherson play, where literally actors would pass a prop from one screen to the next and then receive it as if they're in the same room. In fact, it was shot in 4 different locations simultaneously. So there are opportunities, but one of the big things that we ran into were union entanglements. Many of our actors are, like myself, Screen Actors Guild, AFTRA, SAG-AFTRA members, and there are formidable paperwork restrictions and requirements that we just did not want to get into, and we didn't also want to jeopardize the potential for any of our actors and their union status, because of course there is work in that film and TV medium in town as well. Now, money, how have we been raising money? Benny has done an extraordinary job. We have 3 major grants and some federal and state loans that we have taken advantage of. Those are COVID-related support finances. Our subscribers, most of them have donated their payments for our 2020 season. Some have rolled those over into 2021. There have been a tiny fraction that have asked for a refund. So we've actually managed to acquire, to add to our war chest, and whenever we can start producing again, we're in fabulous shape. We're also planning some fundraising with local restaurants as soon as we can do that, and a special fundraiser at one of our board members' house. And the future, I am designing 2 different seasons, one of which suits the outcome of the election either way. And it's going to be a very different world one way or the other. So in response to that, we'll have a couple of different seasons in my mind. There are about 1,000 people on our mailing list right now. You can get on that list at nmactorslab.com. Please go there, visit our site. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, I really want to express a tremendous amount of compassion and support for my fellow theater producers who have leases to pay in the spaces that they occupy. Actors Lab, of course, doesn't have a resident home, and this year it has been a blessing. Those others who have to pay the rent have a huge financial burden. So think of them, please, in your fundraising, gift giving. Christmas is coming, the holidays are coming. And anyways, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and pitch our season, what we're doing. I wish I could tell you what we're doing next year, but I know Cradle Will Rock will be part of it. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, TLC.
Thank you, Nico. And thank you and New Mexico Actors Lab so much for continuing to be creative in a very, very difficult circumstance. We really appreciate the fact that you are keeping on, keeping on. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll all be together next year, but thank you for presenting what you can and keeping us engaged. We appreciate it. Thank you, Nico. And our next speaker is going to be Caryl Farkas. Carol's the artistic director of the Upstart Crows. So Caryl, if you could also, you've unmuted, great, terrific. The Upstart Crows is a wonderful program that engages so many Santa Fe youth by teaching and producing full-length Shakespeare plays. And Caryl, you've managed to continue working with the Crows somewhat differently during the last 6 months. So we would appreciate you telling us about it.
Absolutely. As Nico said, we as a company live for live rehearsal and performance, and our program really depends on those interactions, actors with their scene partners, actors with the audience, having an audience to respond to, being able to work out our questions in real time and space with each other. When things shut down, we had 3 shows in rehearsal. All of them went to Zoom, where we could take time to do closer reads of the plays and work on our lines. This was kind of a mixed bag, because even though it was a luxury to suddenly have all this time to work more slowly with the plays, and it was a real blessing for all of us to be able to keep our community intact, even though it was online. Some of our actors had internet issues and problems with their computers. One of our actors actually spent a month having to type in his lines into the chat box when he got his cues. So we debated March and April. We kept talking about different ways to produce the shows because we didn't want to lose them, having put in so much work. And we considered Zoom performances. We considered filming and radio show type productions, but in the end, we decided that we would pin our hopes on some loosening of restrictions in the summer, and plan for in-person, masked, socially distanced outdoor shows with tiny audiences. Some of our cast members had to drop out because they didn't feel they could commit to that format for safety reasons. Some had family members who were in the at-risk category and they didn't want to take any chances. So we created 2 online programs for them. We had Shut-in Shakespeare, where actors prepared soliloquies, got online coaching, and then recorded themselves at home. And you can see those videos on our YouTube channel. Upstart Crows of Santa Fe has their own YouTube channel. And we did an online close read of The Taming of the Shrew, with the thought that at some point the company would be producing this show. Summer came. In July and August, we performed our first outdoor production. It was the Shakespeare Gym. Oh, Leslie is on it. We were so blessed to have Gail Mariner, the pastor at the Unitarian Universalist congregation. That's the courtyard I'm sitting in right now. That's the courtyard you're looking at the slide of, and you see our distanced audience, maximum of 10 people. You see the stools that the actors would be using to place themselves in the space. Go ahead, Leslie, let's have that next one. So the Shakespeare Gym is an adult group. Many of them are from Robin Williams' Shakespeare Close Read group, or they are parents of Upstart Crows. And in the past, we've been doing small little scene performances, and because we had all this time, this one got more ambitious. So we had the actors distanced and masked, and they would change characters, and they had little signs around their necks saying who they were. But it was very satisfying. The next production we had was for our normal spring show, which was going to be scenes from Othello. Leslie, can you? Oh, that's one more from the Shakespeare Gym. Yeah, so you can see the signs around their necks. And it's more like a dramatic read is what the Shakespeare Gym did. The kids, of course, were all memorized. So let's go to that set of slides. And we started out with something like 6 iconic scenes from the play, and because we had all this time, the kids got more ambitious. We wound up performing nearly the entire play, which was just amazing. And characters would change. They would flip the cards on their little spiral bound books there to change character. Go ahead, let's see the next one. So we had 14 actors, and they were all between 6 and 8 feet apart. Our rehearsals were outdoors, and the performance obviously was outdoors. Go ahead to the next one, Leslie. This was our performance, whoa, go back one, of Macbeth. And Macbeth was our first Blackfriars project, which was a situation where we would make it possible for one of our veteran young players, a graduating senior, to direct a play that he or she wanted to. And Liam Mitchell chose Macbeth. He had started back in January, and he just talked about the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. What he went through to make this show come together was incredible. That is Banquo's ghost you see there. We had the actors, dressing rooms were parking lot spaces out in back of the church. Everybody got a full parking lot space and a bin with their costumes where they would change. Go ahead to the next one, Leslie. So all the blocking had to be distanced. No one got closer than 6 feet, except perhaps when they were passing the way you do at Trader Joe's. This show, I felt like this was the most like regular theater, and it was interesting that audiences sort of forgot about the masks after the first 5 minutes. Go ahead, Leslie, let's see what's next. So that was the banquet scene from Macbeth. And really simple staging, really simple lighting. But what we found was the audience responded so well. I think part of it is that everyone felt kind of starved for live theater. And part of it was just, that they were applauding the kids for their intrepid efforts. So, is there any more from Macbeth? I think that's it. Yeah. So, we felt these were really successful, apart from Brown Paper Tickets having a corporate breakdown and not paying us for any of our ticket sales, which was difficult. But because of these productions, we were inspired to start up 3 long rehearsal process shows this fall. So I'm sitting in the courtyard at UU Santa Fe now, and behind me you may see some kids trickling in for our rehearsal of The Taming of the Shrew. That is this evening. On Thursdays we do The Tempest here. On Saturdays both groups meet in the courtyard back there at different times, and Sundays we're having the Shakespeare Gym rehearsing its first full-length production of Twelfth Night. So these are different from our usual Crow productions that involve multiple casts. In order to keep our group numbers down, each cast is no more than 11, and that's a number that includes some sibling combinations. So when the weather gets inclement, we're going to shift to Zoom as we did last spring. There's some thought that we might be able to produce these first as radio plays and then in person. The plan is to perform the shows in the late spring the way we did with Macbeth, outdoors, masked, distanced, tiny audiences. And if things miraculously improve, we'll adapt accordingly. I think all these challenges have forced us to work more on performing aspects like articulation and projection, because you've got the masks, and finding ways to convey emotion in distanced blocking. Ariana Karp, the ISC's artistic director, has been working with the kids on some techniques she learned with Ben Crystal's company on their recent tour of Japan. So we're still working on dealing with the financial fallout from not being able to sell many tickets, losing the income that we had made, and having smaller cast plays. And in the midst of all this, we had to leave our rehearsal space in El Dorado since our lease was expiring, and signing up for a new lease would mean we'd be paying full rent on a space we couldn't use. So all our props and costumes are in storage. We're hoping to find another space next year. If you're on our mailing list, you'll be getting a fundraising letter from us in December. And if you'd like to be on our mailing list, just go to our website, upstartcrowsofsantafe.org, and fill out a contact form. You can keep up with us on our website. And that's about it.
Thank you so much, Caryl. That's so impressive that you've managed to keep going. You've managed to keep the kids going, and that you've still got two different plays going at the same time.
Great.
Three, excuse me, as you've always done. I'm so impressed with the Upstart Crows. It is something I think is a wonderful benefit for Santa Fe and for Santa Fe youth to keep them going. So thank you for hanging in there and for keeping it creative and using all of our resources to keep it going. I
Thank
think
you
it's
so
wonderful.
much, Jennifer, and thank TLC for being here tonight. It's just so nice to feel like people are out there that care about theater. So thank
Yes,
you all.
absolutely. Thank you, Caryl. We appreciate it. So our next speaker is going to be Argos McCallum.
Hello. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello. Okay, terrific. I can both hear and see you, Argos.
Oh, great.
You've been a participant in the Santa Fe theater scene almost since you were born. And you were also president at one point of the Santa Fe Playhouse. You've been technical director for Santa Fe University of Art and Design. And it was in 2004, I believe, that
Correct.
you decided to strike out on your own and serve an underrepresented segment of Santa Fe by producing Hispanic plays, poetry, music, and Paraguas has lived up to its name. Paraguas in Spanish is umbrella, and you have served as an umbrella to very, very many theater companies and productions and plays, and we're very, very grateful to have you there. So we'd like to know how you've managed, how you've coped in this particular time. So at this point, Argos, take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer, and thank you, Theater Lovers Club. It's a privilege to be here. This last weekend, it's been 6 months since our last public performance at Teatro Paraguas, which was Ironweed's production of The Aliens. And since then, in a normal year, we would have had over 80 public presentations, plays by New Mexico Actors Lab, Ironweed, of course, Blue Raven Theater, and ourselves, Teatro Paraguas, plus poetry readings and all kinds of things like that. And in fact, if it had been a normal year, our first fall play would open this Thursday. So things are very different, of course, as we know. As a company, it's been very challenging and disappointing not being able to use our stages. As a venue, it's been really difficult. We have no income coming in from the venue itself, but we're still paying rent, insurance, utilities, and all of that stuff. So we're sliding by. We're starting to dip into our rainy day fund. At least we have one. Santa Fe's been very generous on the donation front, so that's been helping us out. And we do have a number of grants. The irony of the grants is that they're all geared toward paying people, since people need money during the pandemic. And what Paraguas really needs is rent money, but we'll work on that one. Yes, we have been exploring various ways of getting around not doing live theater. We were slow out of the mark because we kept naively thinking, well, by July, we'll be able to put on a show. In fact, Ironweed's set for The Aliens is still up in our second space in case in case they can come back and do that. And it's, yeah, so it's getting longer and longer as this time goes by that they are not on our stage. But the first thing we did when we realized that this was a long-term phenomenon, the pandemic, Juliet Salazar chose to do a play by Caridad called Red Bike, kind of a commentary on the social and political landscape in economically depressed America. It was originally written as a monologue, but the playwright said that it could be divided up. So we had 10 actors, came in one at a time to the theater and recorded various sections of the script. And then Juliet and her husband, Steve Nenny, edited it together. And we presented it over 2 weeks on Vimeo. And it's really hard to know how many people really saw it. We do hope to bring it back in October. We have permission from the playwright. Red Bike was then also presented as a radio play on KUNM on September 4th, a Sunday. So it was kind of interesting to really just hear voices and not even the video aspect. Radio play is a very interesting medium that we will keep exploring. We're also at the moment, we're working on a couple of folk tales about a fox and a dog. And this involves actors from the age of 7 up to 70. But we're filming it in all different locations. Each actor is kind of filming themselves somehow, and then it will be edited together. And we hope to have that up by the end of October, if not before. And that's been really interesting because of the different styles and different backgrounds. Some people filmed in the theater, some filmed at home. So it's going to be a interesting kind of melange, a mixture of sight and sounds. But our greatest success actually has been on Zoom with Robert F. Benjamin's play Hunker Down, which was first presented August 4th with Don Converse and Duchess Dale playing the roles of two seniors and how they were coping with the lockdown. And it was interesting because it was a Zoom performance, Zoom presentation of a play about a Zoom conversation. So in that sense, when the kind of reality and the unreality came together there, and we had almost 200 people showed up for that performance. What we found is part of what made the whole thing very exciting, people really loved it, was the feeling afterwards, like, you know, when people gather in the lobby after a performance, and there's a lot of talk and back and forth, people discussing the play. And we found that on Zoom, we were on webinar, but then we brought all the people who wanted to come onto the stage, so to speak, onto the screen. And we had a kind of a lively post-performance party then. We also presented Robert Benjamin's play Almost Treason about Mary Catherine Goddard, who was the second person to publish the Declaration of Independence in 1777. And that play was with Maureen McKenna and Nick Kapustinsky. And it was very well received. In fact, this Friday we have kind of the enhanced encore of Hunker Down. Robert's written if you will, a sequel. What happened 3 weeks later after the first, or what is happening 3 weeks later after the first encounter of the two characters in the play. So we're also working on a collaborative project with Santa Fe Playhouse and Santa Fe Classic Theater to present a number of radio plays in December, January, February, in that period of time. So it's really interesting. We're digging around trying to find plays that will adapt to radio plays that don't have too many visual cues or visual information that the audience must know to understand the play. And we're also, we'll be filming our flamenco presentation with the Compañía Chuscales y Mina Fajardo, filming mid-October. And that will be presented. We are actually, there's a local company here in Santa Fe run by Eric and Alex Streeper called Zerb, X-E-R-B, which is like Vimeo. It's a platform for, Teatro Paraguas now has its own channel, and we will be posting videos of different things on that channel. But of course, none of this compares to, as Nicholas was saying, none of this compares to the real live theater. And it's, we're hoping that we'll find ways when the time comes to recreate great theater, not only our own theater, but theater by other companies in our two spaces there on Calle Marie. I think that's, yeah, you know, this whole question of Zoom theater is very interesting. I think it's going to become a genre of theater. It has its kind of interesting aspects, but I don't think it will ever replace live theater. So that's my 2 cents there, Jennifer, and thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you, Argos. And if you could just leave your video and your microphone on, and Caryl and Nicholas, if you could turn on your video and then your microphone so we can see you all. I would like to thank you all so much. Nicholas, can you turn on your video and then your microphone? Because we want to thank you, all three of you, for continuing to be creative in this extremely difficult time and finding new ways. That's what's been fascinating about this evening, is that no, it's not the old way that we love and we're used to, but all three of you have managed to find new ways to reach out and create and engage us. And I really appreciate that personally. So thank you for keeping on. And now I'm going to turn it over to questions from our audience. Let's see, we've got a few questions here. And one of them is from Barbara Burnett. And I'm going to ask each one of you this question. It's an interesting question. How and where can we see a performance if we cannot watch it on the night it's presented? I'm going to start with you, Nicholas. Do you have any way to access your performances?
All of our work is up on our website right now. That's nmactorslab.com. So you have the video memoirs.
Can you repeat that more slowly? What is,
yeah.
What is your...
all of our work, all of our video work is up on our website, nmactorslab.com.
Thanks.
And the video memoirs that I mentioned are all there, as well as the 3 winners of our Zoom play competition.
Terrific. And Argos, is there any way that we can access that wonderful red bike as well as Robert Benjamin's plays?
Well, Robert's plays, we're very much calling it live on Zoom, so we're not recording. So it's like, you know, if you don't get to the theater on time, you don't see it. There are on our website, teatroparaguas.org, there will be always links to register for whatever performances we do have up on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And once we populate our platform on Zerb, there will be the information on our website.
Terrific. And I do know that you kept the red bike going for several weekends. Was that correct?
We had it going for 2 weekends. We had to be very careful that it could not be downloaded or stolen by anybody because of our concern for the playwright. So that's why it had a limited run. But Karyl has given us permission to bring it back when we want. So we're going to be arranging that soon.
Terrific. And Caryl, I don't know if there's any way we can see you online or your wonderful performers. Are we going to get, how do we get invitations to see an Upstart Crows performance?
So we don't have dates set for the spring shows yet, but keep an eye on our website and we'll have information there. We do have a YouTube channel, so if you go to YouTube and type in Upstart Crows of Santa Fe, you can see all the shut-in Shakespeare monologues. You can see, I think we've got the entirety of the Kids Othello up there. Macbeth might be up there as well. So go to the YouTube channel, you can see a lot of our work.
Great, terrific. Okay, good. We can be connected for a while. That's terrific. There are a couple other questions here. Robert Benjamin has asked, have you found a way, or do you want to, that's my addition, to stimulate post-show audience talkback? And Argos, I know you've done some of that. What is your experience with post-show talkback?
Well, as I mentioned before, it was what we're aiming for is to create the feeling that you know, the post show in the real theater, you have the kind of the electric response of everybody coming together and talking about the play before they walk out the door. So in our case with Robert's plays, we've had the actors and the playwright there to answer questions. And basically, yeah, we always hope the audience hangs around after the actual Zoom show.
Right. Nicholas, I don't believe you've had any audience feedback, but am I correct in that?
Well, not real-time audience feedback. You know, the feedback comes back by people looking at our videos on YouTube, and then thumbs up, thumbs down. The occasional comment will follow as well, but not in the context you're talking about, or Robert's talking about. Yeah.
Okay. And Caryl, do you have any audience feedback after your show, or are the kids all so exhausted they want to go home and celebrate?
Oh no, they want to go to Cowgirls and but that just doesn't work. So they have to take all their energy and go home with it.
Thanks for the plug,
Yeah.
Caryl. I owe you.
We that's our cast party plays. So yeah, we miss that. We miss the talkbacks. We miss the pre-show talks. Like Nico said, just thumbs up or thumbs down on YouTube, and that's it.
Okay, well, we're hoping 2021 is going to be very different, but this is so grateful that you guys have managed to continue on as you have. I have one more question here from an anonymous person. It says, a lot of us grew up on radio plays, Inner Sanctum or Miss Brooks. How would you do a nostalgia radio series? Or is that something that would interest any one of you as artistic directors? Nicholas, would that interest you?
Well, I love the idea of radio drama, and have done a fair amount of it myself personally and historically speaking. But what we're up against now, again, as I alluded to in my first spiel, was union issues, because the AFTRA part of SAG-AFTRA is going to encompass some radio work. So if we're broadcasting scripted material and we're using union actors, we are technically required to go through a tremendous amount of legwork and paperwork, even if it's for no fee, to correspond with the union. And generally we're shying away from that and focusing our efforts on the bigger picture. However, if it looks like this is going to continue much longer, all options are open, including radio plays and more Zoom plays or Zerb or whatever, on whatever platform we can, and with whatever arrangement with the unions that we can wrangle.
Great. Argos, I'm going to ask you, if you had mentioned radio plays, anything particularly in nostalgia that you're thinking, or you're still following your mission statement of Hispanic plays?
Uh, well, our mission statement is not only Hispanic plays or Latinx plays, but plays from New Mexico playwrights. Um, so, or plays that have Hispanic Latinx themes. Um, One of the plays that we had proposed to do in conjunction with the Playhouse and the Classic Theater is a play called A Sunny Morning, about two octogenarians who meet by chance on a park bench in Madrid, Spain, and discover that 60 years before they had been lovers. And they each discover it independently and don't want to tell the other one because they're so changed from what they were when they were gallant and beautiful. And we realized that a lot of the octogenarians nowadays were the people that grew up in the heyday of radio theater in the 30s, 40s, early 50s. So in that sense, it's given a real push to us to explore the radio theater aspect. Since we can't be live on stage, why not go back to a previous technology that a lot of our patrons grew up with.
Mhm. Terrific. And Caryl, you mentioned radio as well.
Yeah, it would be really nostalgic going back to 1600. So we would be doing Shakespeare as our radio presentations. But I love the idea that the questioner had. It would be great to hear some of those old style radio shows.
Great. And I have a question here from Mim. Says, let's see. She says, we all know the challenges of this era, but do you see any positive creative things that may come from the work you're doing during this COVID pause? And I'm going to go with Caryl, seeing we have her on.
Yeah, I'd actually typed an answer in there, but it's been really exciting actually learning that you can create intimacy on a stage even if you're 20 feet apart. That there are different ways to do stage violence. There's different ways to do physical comedy when you can't touch each other. And we've been exploring those. As I said, Ariana Karp, who is the artistic director for the International Shakespeare Center and has worked with the Crows. Ari and I go way back to when she was 14 in a similar youth Shakespeare program in Madison, Wisconsin. And she's been working with Ben Crystal's Shakespeare Company, and they've learned all kinds of interesting ways to deal with the challenge that we're faced with.
Thank you. Argos, what has been your discovery during this incredible time?
Well, one of the things, trying to get all the communication straight with different people on different, computers and this and that. It's been, in the old days, you just call a rehearsal at 6 o'clock in the theater and everyone shows up. This has been a lot more difficult process dealing this way, but it has its own rewards. So, and just, I guess, the feeling that actually something is happening in spite of this incredibly serious situation that the whole world finds themselves in.
Have you had to learn some new creative ways of working that you never thought you would?
Well, like on video, you can't be a stage actor. You have to pull it way back in, and so we've had to redo takes where it just got a little too wild. People thought they were on the stage, a real stage, and not on a virtual reality. So.
So you've been learning film acting as you go.
Exactly.
Nicholas, has there been any creative discoveries that you guys have made while you're working in difficult circumstances.
Yeah, well, from probably most importantly, from a dramaturgical point of view, is drilling down to figure out what's important, to figure out what resonates at this time of our cultural changes, and not only in the national and global sense, but in our community sense. And we all know there are a tremendous number of plays out there, and to find the right ones for the right time is an incredible challenge. What I'm learning about that is that the input from others is incredibly important. And I really appreciate our advisory board, our board of directors, friends and co-actors, and people who just, want to put a little bug in my ear about what they think might be timely. And I think this really harkens to the potential for a wonderful renaissance when we reopen, when the doors, when the curtains part once again and we hit stage. But I'm really excited for the future. There's a lot of groundwork to do between now and then.
Well, I'd like to say thank you to all three of you for your time and your interest and your perseverance, continuing on to be creative and thoughtful and making theater in a very difficult time, but we are so very grateful for you all. So at this time, however, I'm going to turn it over to our audience, to our Theater Lovers Club members, and we'd like to know your thoughts. We're going to do a Q&A in reverse. We're going to put up some slide questions we'd like you to speak to. And so if you could go to the Q&A, type your responses to these questions, and we'll gather your responses. We'll forward them to our panelists. And there's an option to be anonymous if you want to write a response to these questions and not have anybody know who you are. You can be anonymous. They're still just as valid, if not more so. While you're at, this has been such a fascinating discussion that I would really like to thank again Nicholas and Caryl and Argos for sharing their time and their thoughts with us. And you three can feel free to leave the discussion now, because we're just going to continue on with our audience. But we're really so appreciative to you guys. Thank you. And we'll see you at the theater. Bye.